following is a special meeting of the Arizona Racing Commission held December 13, 2018 at 1110 West Washington, Suite 250, Phoenix, Arizona 85007. The time is...
All right, it's 10 o'clock. You know where your children are? Well, that's a different... I'd like to call to order the December 13th, 2018 special meeting of the Arizona Racing Commission. And I would entertain a motion to go into executive.
Oh, we have to do roll call, sir. Thank you. Good morning. Commissioner Garay?
Present. Commissioner
Heupel?
Here.
Commissioner Lawless?
Here.
Commissioner McClintock?
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum, and as a public service, please silence or turn all cell phones off. If you must take a call, please be courteous to those around you and take the conversation out into the hallway. Thank you.
Now, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I move that we go into an executive session.
Can you save the agenda item, please?
Item B1.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Commissioner Garay?
Yes.
Commissioner Heupel?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawless?
Yes.
Commissioner McClintock?
Yes.
Thank you. We are now in executive. This session is recessed at 10:01 for executive session.
All right. All members of the public must leave the room and must take all materials such as briefcases, backpacks with them, and the only persons whose presence is reasonably necessary for the Commission to carry out its executive session responsibilities may remain. Minutes of and discussions made at an executive session are required by law to be kept confidential, shall not be communicated to any person not present in the room during the executive session, except to members of the board or a person who is the subject of a personal employment discussion pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A1, the Auditor General in connection with an audit authorized by the law and the Attorney General.
Guys. Following is the second open session of the December 13th, 2018 special meeting of the Arizona Racing Commission held at 1110 West Washington, Suite 250, Phoenix, Arizona 85007. The time is... Yes, I do. Okay. Okay, the time is 10:28. We are back on the record for the second open session. This is Cassie Goodwin. I will take the roll call. Commissioner Garay?
Here.
Commissioner Heupel?
Here.
Commissioner Lawless?
Here.
Commissioner McClintock?
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. And again, as a public service, please silence or turn off all cell phones. If you must take a call, please be courteous to those around you and take the conversation out into the hall. Thank you.
I make a motion to move to have council proceed as directed in the executive session.
I'll second.
Thank you. Commissioner Garay?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawless?
Yes.
Commissioner Heupel?
Yes.
Commissioner McClintock?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Okay, and there was a request from a Nathan Nask or Nart. I can't...
Sorry, it's Novak, Mr. Chairman.
Novak, okay.
No comments at this time.
All right, thank you. All right, then we'll move on to the action items. And is it okay to move to item 2 first?
Yes,
Let's go to action item 2. Tucson Greyhound Park off-track betting facility, Riverside Inn Saloon at 761 East 4th Street in Benson, Arizona. Alicia, you want to give us a little background on...
Kay Daggert's on the Riverside Saloon for at least 15 years. Her family runs it. It's a wonderful location. It's rural. They're going to be building 7,000 homes in the area soon. Plenty of space inside. And we've got employees already being trained, and everybody's really excited to open it.
Good. Will this be for dogs and horses?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion.
So
Have Greg
from
give-
Greg.
If I may.
Sorry.
This was put in October by Alicia at TGP. We've done our background research. We've verified that both the owners of the facility are licensed and their background investigations are complete. We would ask for approval of this OTB location on the condition that the managers of the facility still need to be licensed, so we haven't identified them. So we have the ability to have 5 working days to get the management, the OTB manager's license. And they can do that online now, as we have a payment portal, so that's a shameless plug for our website payment portal.
Excuse me, Trey? Donnie and I believe it was her husband or brother already sent in their applications to Trip Paradise.
Okay, we'll check on that then.
Good. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the off-track betting facility at Riverside Inn and Saloon.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Garay.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawless?
Yes.
Commissioner Heupel?
Yes.
Commissioner McClintock?
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries and the OTB is granted to Riverside Inn Saloon.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, action item number 1 is consideration of the removal of the 140-day race requirement for Rillito Racetrack, ARS 512C, D, and E. And I would entertain a motion to go back into executive session so we could discuss this with our Assistant Attorney General.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Garay.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawless?
Yes.
Commissioner Heupel?
Yes.
Commissioner McClintock?
Yes.
Okay, it is 10:32 a.m. and the second open session is recessed for an executive session. Thank you. Deanie, give me 1 second. Following is the third open session of the December 13, 2018 Special Arizona Racing Commission meeting held at 1110 West Washington, Suite 250, Phoenix, Arizona 85007. The time is...
I'd like to reopen the meeting to the public.
Thank you. The time is 10:54 a.m. We are reconvened in the normal meeting of the Racing Commission. This is Cassie Goodwin. I will take the roll call. Commissioner Garay?
Here.
Commissioner Lawless?
Here.
Commissioner Heupel?
Here.
Commissioner McClintock?
Here.
Thank you. We have the quorum. And again, as a public service, please silence or turn off all cell phones. If you must take a call, please be courteous to those around you and take the conversation out into the hall. Thank you.
All right. Well, since the motion that we passed to remove the 140-day race requirement was voided because the wrong statute was cited, I would entertain a motion to reconsider this and maybe some discussion.
I'd move at this time to go ahead and deny, and then maybe give the parties some instruction afterwards.
Okay.
Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Could you state that motion louder, please? We couldn't hear you.
The motion was at this time to deny and then give some instruction afterwards.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Heupel seconded that motion, and I'm doing the roll. Commissioner Garay?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawless?
Yes.
Commissioner Heupel?
Yes.
Commissioner McClintock?
Yes.
Okay, that motion has carried, and if you would like to...
Yeah.
Yeah. At this time, I think this issue was created by a couple of years ago when the legislature passed a bill down there which was basically to try to get rid of greyhound racing, and also it's done away with the dome protection. And I know after they passed that, several of the members stated that they still had work to do to protect those down there that were covered by the dome. Nothing happened in that 2 years, but I do know at this time bills can be dropped for the next legislative session that will be beginning. So I would think at this time would be a good time to start working with them, the parties, to get those protections that need to be put in place instead of trying to do it through us. I think that would be the appropriate place to get this done instead of here.
For the record, Jay Wells, President of Rito Racing and Rito Park Foundation. Boy, I'm disappointed. This is a case of where when you say nothing's happened, lots has happened. And you've been hearing me stand up here and talk about the inequities in the statutes and laws for quite some time. The effort to get the dome rule where we were not the collateral damage of that phasing dog track legislation, live racing out, basically falls on the backs of a retail racetrack. In short, based on your decision today, we are going to lose $160,000 worth of revenue from a commission that we really didn't deserve. Because the Doan rule was so convoluted, retail was boxed out from having the normal fair trade opportunities to generate revenue that every racetrack typically has. A commercial racetrack has the right to generate some funds from simulcast racing and OTB wagering. So this, what basically means is this happened is because of the legislation to outlaw dog racing in Pima County, the racetrack can't generate any funds, period, through OTB wagering or simulcast wagering. The dog track, who does not run any live races at all, has the right to have the parlors and broadcast the horse signal, garner the wagering profits from that, as well as Maricopa County. What you're basically saying is for every dollar that is wagered in Pima County, there's an average of 20 cents takeout. Of those 2 dimes, if it stays the status quo between the relationship of Turf Paradise and now Rayito's out of it, 18 cents of that 20 cents is going to flow to Maricopa County, and that's just plain wrong. I think one thing everyone in this room could agree with is that our statutes and laws are antiquated at best and manipulated at worst. And this is a classic case of where the little guy gets suffocated because this is not some new news to you. You're aware of what the ramifications, and this collateral damage is falling on Rayito Racetrack. We are a non-profit. We are, just 2 weeks ago, signed an agreement with the University of Arizona to where we have 60 interns working there. And I think you all asked at the last meeting that you have a chance to simply review our audit. And clearly in the audit, the auditor states how imperative it is for us to have that money. And if you take that money out of that, not only do we write off $160,000 worth of revenue, we also have to write off the overpayment that's built up on our balance sheet. And you're not giving us any way to earn that money back. Your earlier vote to give us a chance to earn the money was the first fair play balance that I have ever seen here after 8 years of coming to the commission. So I don't know what action I can ask you to take today, but I would ask you to reconsider this vote. It's very unfair. It is just a shame. I'm speechless. I'm shocked, but I'm not surprised.
Okay, let's move on to item D, discussion items. And under D, number 1.
May I have someone else speak on our behalf?
Sir?
Kevin, may I have someone else speak on our behalf? Kevin DeMetta.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, for the record, I am Kevin DeMetta, with DeMetta Public Affairs here on behalf of Rayito. And I think it's important to get this into the record, and I appreciate you allowing me to take another moment of your time. Rayito is a state and a national treasure. I'm not sure that the charge of this commission is broad enough to accept that and factor it into its decision-making, but this is yet another blow favoring one racing interest over another that this commission is pushing forward. The result is to put Rayito back on its heels again. Preservation efforts. We're talking about trying to get this to be a viable track, and over the interests that really revolve around gaming and off-track betting, we are slowly strangling my client. This motion clearly favors one racing interest over another. And you have the authority to continue this, rather, as my client said to me when he stood up, rather than to kick the can down to the legislature. But that is what's happening. I think it's important to stress this is your right, this is within your purview, but it's not appropriate. I've been involved in Arizona government for nearly 40 years. Distinct lack of sunshine. The distinct lack of sunshine involved in the decision-making here speaks to the need for legislation, speaks to whether this commission is, in fact, an anachronism. I would encourage you to reconsider Rayito for the gem that it is and step up to the plate. Resist the other racing interests and try to give us a little protection. With that, for the record, appreciate you listening.
Thank you. Discussion item D, transmission of signals between Arizona racetracks. I'd like to limit this discussion to 5 minutes from each interested party. So, Mr. Author.
For the record, I'm Tom Author with Arizona Downs. Director Commissioners, Greg, I've had a number of conversations with Turf Paradise people, and we kind of don't really understand why this should be treated any different from any of the other signals they get. But in the interest of getting some purse money out to everybody and moving forward, I think we're pretty close to being able to say, let's do it the way that was proposed to us, which is essentially the 5.5% or 5.25%, as opposed to the traditional way of the takeout, and move on with this. But we only do it understanding that we want to continue to consider after our meet. We're going to the old way. We're a little confused as to why it needs to be changed, and frankly, a little maybe even suspicious might be too strong. But at any rate, I think that probably given enough time, and I'm saying probably within the next few days, we should be able to come to a conclusion on that. I think that everybody can live with understanding that we're doing it in the hopes that the horsemen and turf down the road will help us when we need some help, because we're doing something that we aren't 100% sure is smart for us. But again, in order to get there's racing going on, and there's no purses going to the horsemen from our OTBs, and that we need to fix that. We're willing to kind of fall on our sword for now, with the understanding that we need to go through this, get a fair contract, and keep revisiting this so that after our meet comes September 1st, we may have a different answer. But to continue debating it is just going to prevent purses. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Tom. Anyone else want to weigh in on this issue? Leroy?
Commissioners, Director Leroy Guestman, the Arizona AFPA. I just want to say I want to thank Tom Arthur for coming around and accepting this proposal for this 1 year for 2018 and 2019. I think it's and the horsemen, we think it's very important that all three tracks show each other's signal and that they show the entire card. This is all about Arizona racing, and we need all three tracks supporting each other and all three tracks showing the entire card from the other tracks. And I would just like to see what can be done about making sure that happens in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Leroy. Anyone else? All right, let's move on to D, number 2. Permitted proposed changes to ACC R19-2-419 simulcast wagering. Who wants to go first? Please limit your time to 5 minutes if you can.
I was only 3 last night.
I know you did a good job. Yeah, you might have a couple extra.
For the record, Tom Author, Arizona Downs. We proposed an addition to the rules stating that, in general, any provider of a signal that's sent in the state of Arizona needs to provide that to all permittees. I think what we've gotten back is that that's not something that you guys can do. You're not allowed to vote on that. I'm here to tell you, you are. And if you follow the statutes, All of the horse racing, one of the most important horse racing parts is 5111A, and that basically handles all the simulcast wagering. That is specifically exempted from the GRRC. And if you want to track it, those exemptions are listed in 41-1005. And in that it says exemptions, and number 16 is rules made pursuant to section 5111, subsection A. And that is wagering percentage to permittee and state exemptions. If you read that, it's basically contains all of your rulemaking for simulcast wagering. Incidentally, I got all this information from a link on your website that is there to explain why you're exempted from this lengthy rulemaking process. And then finally, in Article 5, it talks about Governor's Regulatory Review Council, and that's the list of items that you got a review council member, economic impact study, all that stuff. At the end of that is a statement that says exemptions. In addition to the exemptions stated in section 41-1005, this article does not apply to, so that's exempted. You don't have to go through that lengthy process. And finally, on every rule that's ever been promulgated by the commission, it starts with the preface. 419, 420, 415, 414, 413, they all start with, this section was made under exemption from the provision of the Arizona Administrative Procedure Act pursuant to ARS 41-105A16. Exemption from rulemaking process means that the AC did not submit these rules, and it was not required to accept public comment, and the rules were not approved by the Governor's Regulatory Council or the Attorney General. So, and again, that's every rule that's been promulgated. So, this doesn't really address why we think it needs to be. Hopefully everybody's under agreement that we need this kind of rule, as 5 other states have done. And this isn't really specific simply to the monarch signal. It's a bit of an issue. What if we wanted to go to, say, NYRA and say, what would you charge us for the exclusive right to Arizona signal? And we paid them for that, and then we had the exclusive right to that signal. Now we've got competing OTBs, and you got this, and we got that, and it becomes a real mess. And that's why these other states have addressed it this way. It even went up to the Supreme Court of the state of Florida, and they said, no, you've got the ability to do that, and it's really the only way to level the playing field. And if there's a concern that, well, as an example, Monarch will say, well, fine, we won't send a signal at all. Maybe, maybe not. They're probably making a couple $1 million a year off Arizona. That will likely go to $3 million once we can get up and running. Maybe they do that, maybe they don't. And the other question is, what impact does it really have? You still have the same number of OTBs. Bettors are still going to go to OTB and bet. And they're going to bet on the tracks that are available. I just think it's a travesty that they're able to dictate policy to Arizona horsemen. And tangentially, Rito's injured by this too, because had we been able to have a decent signal down in Tucson, we'd be opening OTBs down there, and we would cooperate with Rito and help them get purses. Now we'll get their signal. We're going to get that signal. The sooner the better. But until we do, we've got an inferior product. And that's my 5 minutes, Cassie?
5 minutes.
Yep, 15 seconds, sir.
Okay.
Well, anyway, you understand. We think it's a rule that needs to be passed. Other states have recognized that and done it. You've got the authority to do it. If we could just agree, okay, we agree, and then whatever needs to be done from there, we'll carry the ball with the help of Ms. Ray and whoever else is here that can help us shepherd this thing through the final process. Anyway, thank you, and that's all I really have to say.
All right, thanks, Tom. We want you to have a Monarch signal. We just don't know how we can make them give it to you.
Now you know.
All right, thanks.
Told you.
I'm Buzz Alston for Surf Paradise. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the one of the things that's missing in this room is a representative from Monarch. And Monarch is the person, the entity that the effect of this rule that they're asking about would require Monarch to do something that Monarch may or may not want to do. And that is sell a signal to everybody, and whoever the permittees are in Arizona. Furthermore, there is two things about what Mr. Arthur talked about, what other states have done. Every one of those 5 states he talked about was done by statute. The legislature did it. It was not a rule change. It was the legislature did it. And I think everybody knows that right now Governor Ducey is not inclined to have any new rules passed at this stage of the game. So what this needs to do is needs to go back to the legislature if it goes anywhere. But I talked to Scott Girardi and about those 5 states and the effect that the legislation, the effect it had on their racing there, and it wasn't good. But more importantly, and to the point, excuse me, it is pretty clear that the Racing Commission doesn't have the authority to get involved with disputes between permittees or disputes between a permittee and a vendor. And I think that Mr. Casillas recently acknowledged that in a dispute between Arizona Downs and Rito and the dog people down there. So that's one problem you have. But the final problem is this: Mr. Doherty has talked with. He talked with Mr. Stiles. I think he may have talked with Chairman Casillas. He talked to 2 of the investigators from the department investigators. He talked last week, I think, to Leroy here last week down in Tucson about these issues. And I would suggest, I'm not going to stand up here and repeat what he told me, but before you make any decisions on this, I would suggest you do 2 things. Number 1, that you call the head guy at Monarch, Scott Doherty, and ask him. I asked him, I said, did you tell the people that you talked to from the Federation, did you tell them the same thing you told me? And he said he did. And I would suggest if you call him and have a conversation with him about why he feels the way he does about this request. And secondly, I would suggest that you have a conversation with the governor's office about what's going to happen if Mr. Doherty decides that I don't need Arizona. I own 5 racetracks. I sell signals all over the country. I'm not going to be pushed around, and I don't need Arizona. Arizona needs me. And if you pass this and he refuses to send anybody a signal, that's the end of racing in Arizona. 42% of Turf's revenue comes from the Monarch signals. 42% of the purses that the horsemen receive come from the Monarch signals. And Turf cannot operate if they lose that revenue. Turf wants to have robust thoroughbred racing in Arizona every place they can get it in Arizona. They want to see racing in Yavapai County. They're saying to see racing down in Tucson, because if they can keep the horsemen and the horses in state instead of having to have to truck them off to Montana or someplace, that's good for everybody. But in the meantime, before you make any decisions, you really need to talk. You really need to talk to the man from Monarch.
Okay, thanks, Bugs. Before I do anything else, I've been told that I misread this item, permitting proposed changes to AAC. I said ACC. So it's the permitting proposed changes to AAC R19-2-419 simulcast wagering. Leroy, would you like to say something on behalf of the horsemen? Maybe tell us about your conversation with Scott Doherty.
Leroy Gussman, Commissioners. Well, I don't know that I want to go on record and repeat what Mr. Durotti said. One thing I will say about all this is being the president of the National HBPA, I have been involved in the HBPA for 20 years, and I've never have heard of or seen where a company refused to sell a signal to anybody. The Horsemen want this signal to be sold to anybody that will buy it. That's how horsemen all over the country survive, is from these signals. That's why we fought so hard to control the Interstate Horse Racing Act. We control the signals. One thing I don't know what would happen to Stronach Group if Monarch would shut off Arizona. Because you're not just affecting Arizona horsemen. You're affecting horsemen in Florida. You're affecting the horsemen in California. You're affecting the horsemen in Maryland. You're affecting the horsemen in Texas because they're affiliated with Monarch. You're affecting horsemen all over America if they shut this off. And I really don't see that as something the American horsemen across the country would stand for. I have tried to not bring this out on the national level and make them aware of what's going on. But I guarantee you, if the horsemen at Santa Anita and the horsemen at Gulfstream Park knew what was going on here and that their purse money was being affected by what's going on in Arizona, Mr. Durotti would have several more phone calls than just the people in Arizona calling. Thank you.
Thanks, Leroy.
Based on those comments, Buzz Alston for Turf Paradise, I just need another minute or so.
Okay, you got 1 minute.
Okay. One of the most precious rights the horsemen have, and thank goodness they have it, is the right to withhold consent to a signal. That is probably done more for the sport of thoroughbred racing than anything else you can imagine. That's a very important right, and they cherish it, and they should cherish it, and it's supported, and it should be supported. But if this passes, if you have a rule that says if a provider if he sells to one, he has to sell to all at the same price, can't pick and choose, the horsemen will have in effect lost a good bit of their right to withhold their consent. How do they withhold consent for track B if they have a good reason to do so? But the law says that if track B can't have it, nobody else can have it. So it's a consent deal.
Thanks, Buzz.
Mr. Chairman.
Let me just finish, Jay. Don't mind.
You have 2
1
minutes
minute.
left.
Tom Author, Arizona Council. A couple things. One, the reason that had to pass legislatively in those other places, they were not the beneficiary of that exception to allow them to make the rule. Secondly, it's the same thing we heard when you open up your OTBs, you're going to run us out of business. We're going to have to shut down. It's the end of racing. Well, the handle's up 50% in Prescott. It's up 58% in Lake Havasu. So I don't think there's any reason to believe that just because Monarch's gone, I'm not saying it's going to help, but to think that purses are going to dry up, nobody's going to go to the OTBs, no, that's an opinion. And I don't necessarily agree with it. I think the horsemen would agree with it also. And I hereby would like to restate our rule by adding at the beginning, and subject to horsemen's approval, the signal. And so, I mean, we would be happy to let the horsemen declare, sorry, we don't care what that, it's going to take our approval at any rate. And so I think what you're just hearing here is, why not let it in? What's the argument for not letting it in? I don't understand Turf's opposition to this rule. I mean, we're afraid to make rules because of what might happen. Well, let's make it, see what happens. At any rate, last thing, I do want to assure everybody, because there's been a lot of this, we fully intend to run up in Prescott. We're not just here horsing around. So anybody that's saying anything about whether we're going to have a meet or not is just wrong. We started working the track. I'm getting into a little bit of it, but started working the track, having our first big event there Saturday. The building's all done. So we're going to run. You know, this speaks to the quality of our meet, but we're going to run. So I want everybody, and I think this is just a rule that, again, other states have done it. Whether they did it legislatively was simply because they weren't allowed the benefit of this exemption. So I think I'm done.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Jay Wells, Retail Racing. The only reason I step up here is because he mentioned the issue with Rito and that the department decided not to get into a dispute between permittees, which I regret that you guys did not weigh in on that, because I don't know if are y'all aware of what happened where we gave permission for Breeders' Cup broadcast to come in, to get the Breeders' Cup into Pima County. We've got a string of emails where everyone agreed that going forward past January 1, that regardless of who this horse signal came into the dog track would be responsible for negotiating so that we continue to get the status quo payment. We saw that as a fallback. We've got a string of emails. We've got Alicia agreeing to it. They get the Breeders' Cup, and then suddenly Mike Rossi jumps up and says that he does not agree to it. A string of emails does not constitute a contract. I'm not up here to vent so much about that, but to point out that one of the things that Buzz just mentioned was that, you guys don't have anything to do about permittee issues and contracts. Well, what was going on when Churchill Downs' contract was being negotiated last summer? You guys intervened in that. There was mediation required. There was clearly, and anybody that goes back and looks at that record will demonstrate that the commission took it on their shoulders to be involved in the negotiations between Turf Paradise and Rito. So I can only assume that if it's an issue that deals with Turf Paradise suffering from some issue one way or the other, you guys will get involved. If it's the rest of us, that's not your purview. This is wrong. You guys need to straighten this out. This is a regulated industry, and I'm starting to wondering who is actually doing the regulating. Is it Turf Paradise actually going behind the scenes and making this happen? It's blatant. It's obvious to anybody that's paying attention to what's going on that this is an unfair situation. Arizona Downs has come in with goodwill, negotiated with us to bring Arizona racing up to what it should be, as opposed to this shrinking industry that we currently have. And I would ask you gentlemen to assert your authority given to you by the statutes, given to you by the legislature, and not just always defer it, to kick it down let's let the legislation fix it somewhere down the road. Please, we need it. In the state of Arizona, you guys should be regulating this, overseeing it, being the authority. More importantly, you should be nurturing it.
Thanks, Jay. All right, we're going to move on to information reports, item E. Greg, you want to give us a safety report?
Safety report this month. Staff, as I always say, continually looks for issues on the backside. Any of the outside barn areas are being kept clean, and if you've been back there, you can see a lot of them take pride in their workplace surroundings. We looked at drainage. General inspections indicate no real major issues. There are some pooling, certain roadways and things of that nature. Training track grade is appearing to do its job. The west side drainage ditch has water flowing through it. It's not being blocked at this point in time. And again, typically the water pools in the morning when they're washing the horses, and then we monitor that throughout the day to make sure it's being taken care of. With the vegetation, trees and weeds, oleanders on the north side are cut down. They're no issue. We're beginning to see some weed patches, which is to be expected, some overgrown vegetation. In general, we're told that the trainers and the staff maintain their own barns, so we'll be looking for that to happen in the next couple of weeks. We'll monitor the situation as the weather gets warmer and the weeds grow faster. We did a backside lighting tour recently. Didn't see anything major. All the lights were on. You've got some pictures there in your report. It looks fine. Backside lighting. We didn't see any light bulbs, broken or anything like that. So we're fine with that. We continue to monitor that on a weekly basis. I put in a picture of a barn that had Christmas decorations. They're very festive back there. It was nice to see. You mentioned last month about the tarps on the shed rows. I have a picture on there for you. One or two barns back there. It's not every barn, but the tarps are from roof to the ground, and you can see that. That does pose a danger that we can't see in that shed row. So this was the same issue we worked on last year. Trainers were very receptive to this, and we're asking that the tarps from the ground, about 1 or 2 feet up, be removed. So not only Turf Paradise staff, security staff, but our staff can see if there's somebody in the shed row, even if it's a loose horse. You don't want to have a blocked barn area. Specific incidents, recently we had an incident on a training track where a horse got loose. You can see that I think the fence took the worst of the issue. That was repaired in a timely manner, and they got to it fine, and you can see before and after pictures. Thank you very much.
There's in the last month, there's been 2 items that did not hear about. And first of all, I want to say I was a little disappointed that I had to hear about it on Facebook and have not been notified about it. There was apparently a jockey injured, and then there's been a fire back there. Why is nothing about that in here? Why didn't we hear about it? Why did I have to hear about it on Facebook?
Well, the fire incident, I think, was on November 24th, if I'm correct. That was reported in the paper. We are looking into that. Okay.
Is the fire department doing an investigation, or has there been a report yet as to the cause?
We haven't seen a report at this point in time, but we're looking into that. As far as the jockey, I think the jockey injury was Martin Brudeau. It was in a race, a quarter-horse race. I do think that was November 24th. He was very severely injured. There is a GoFundMe page for some help with medical issues. At this point in time, the stewards had, I think at that point in time, they looked at the race, and these quarter horses, they're rockets, and these jockeys, these men and women on the backside, anytime they get aboard those horses, things can happen.
And again, just for the future, I would prefer to hear about it from the department, as soon as we know about it, instead of hearing about it on Facebook. And with regards to the fire, I know I had been back on the backside a few months, actually starting day, and there were some reports of some of the electrical outlets not being up to par. And I don't want to know, if that was the cause of the fire, we need to get that taken care of. I do not want a horse or one of those people working on the backside get injured or dead on my watch.
Commissioner Gray, can I be very specific? Would you like us to alert you to any incidents back there?
Yes.
Thank you.
Steve.
I'd just like to reiterate what the commissioner said. I live 200 yards from the corner of the property. This fire was a concern. It's going to be brought up at our HOA. I don't know how close it was to the feed store that stores hay and oats. Thank goodness. Some of the media reports were that it was 2:30 in the morning and they had problem getting water on it. And thank goodness there was no wind. It's a concern for that whole neighborhood if we watch what happened in California. It only takes a very little bit of a problem in a windy day to burn a whole neighborhood or a whole town. I think this is a concern of emergency nature. I live 200 yards, and for it to be downplayed, I'll go to my HOA and ask and we need some answers, and we need them soon so this doesn't happen again. If they are electrical, could it happen tonight? Could it happen at the next storm? These are emergency type situations. Let's prevent them, and that's a concerned resident right there. Again, I don't know how close it was. I don't know exactly what barn it is in, but please, there is a sense of urgency to get this handled. Thank you very much.
guys want to address that at all? Or just...
I will, Mr. Chairman, when I have the meeting.
Okay. Item 2, budget report.
Ray Anderson, President, to present.
Thanks.
Hello, for the record, my name is Lori Anderson with the Department of Gaming. I'm just here to give you a brief update on the budget. Currently, the budget's doing well. We're under appropriation, so we're on the right track. We don't foresee any issues. And we're just now beginning calculations for Arizona Downs.
Thanks, Lori. Committee reports. American Greyhound Racing?
No update.
Thanks. Arizona Downs?
I'll be brief. Tom Watford from Arizona Downs. Just an update. As I said, we've started working the track. The building's done. We have our first event up there. I think I might have mentioned there's 300 people. It'll be up on our 3rd floor. It's our general manager, Ann, told McGovern, said that they were so impressed with it, they've doubled their alcohol order. And then I said, who is it? He said it's an organization for wayward girls. And I said, well, that's she. And she said, Tom, it's just for the administrative staff. So maybe we take a field trip up there, but we may as well stay here. Other than that, everything's going fine. And I just want to say, I appreciate the effort you guys put in. I know you've been cast into a much more difficult situation than probably anybody anticipated. We respect that and hope you don't think we're just lobbing problems your way, but I think these are issues that do need to be handled, and fortunately or unfortunately, you guys are the guys we have to come to. But we appreciate what you do, and thank you.
A couple quick questions, Tom. What, without getting the Monarch signal, now it's my understanding you get the Monarch signal once you start racing, is that correct?
They have not said that. They have not said that.
Oh, I thought they had said
There's this implication, maybe, but I think when everybody's dancing around, they're in a fight with Corey Johnson. So what a personal problem impact Arizona horsemen. Well, I mean, they're suing each other, and who knows? But yeah, no, we have nobody has said I'm going to give it to you when you.
What were your projected purses for the summer?
Well, we had hoped to run 30, 35 days at north of 80 a day. So we'll call it almost 3 million.
And how do you think this will affect you without the Monarch signal?
Well, we're not going to be anywhere near that. That doesn't, how do we address that? Do we add it to our capital account, or do we just say, hey, we're not going to be as good as we hope? That's something we need to address with the horsemen. But I'm optimistic we'll have a good meet. I think, we're not all in agreement on how we want to handle that. So fortunately, we've got an odd number of partners, so we'll be able to make a decision.
Okay.
I thought for sure knowing you, David, here was going to be about the wayward girls. I'm sorry. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Tom.
Commissioners, may I interject? Are you asking the division to do anything with this rule? Are you asking us to look into it, or?
Yes, we would like for you to look into the rule. We're going to do that under summary of current events, but
Okay.
now's as good a time as any, so please look into the rule.
And will you come back, obviously, with a recommendation? Is that the plan? Okay.
County fairs, anyone? Rito Park.
Mr. Commissioner, I'd like to introduce Zach Taylor, our Assistant General Manager.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for the time. I'll be acting as the Assistant GM for Michael Weiss for the upcoming Rito meet. I'm also a senior in the racetrack industry program at the University of Arizona. I distributed earlier some copies of a Blood Wars article that was recently published in their most recent magazine, outlining some of the things that Rito has done for students, and I'd like to touch a little bit more on that. And just 3 examples of people I've met throughout my time in the racetrack industry program. Joe Longo, 2 years ago, worked the simulcast contracts for us. He's now the simulcast director at NYRA. Scott Little, who I think a lot of you might recognize or remember from last year. He's in product management or quality management at Amtoke now, a job that suits him very well. And Pete Aiello, who calls the races at Gulfstream Park, called his first ever race at Burrito Park. The reason I touch on these three people is because I know them well enough to know that they are going to better the overall sport of racing. And that is why it is so important for the partnership between the Racetrack Industry Program, the College of Ag and Life Sciences, and Burrito Park. It will overall better the sport. And I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we're happy with the program that Rito, it's not the time to get into this, but we don't want to hamper the ability of Rito to make money, and I know we are now, but hopefully in the future there'll be some things we can do to make this work out better.
Thank you very much.
Tucson Greyhound Park.
Alicia Heiser, General Manager, Tucson Greyhound Park. Actually, Alicia Heiser, Federico now.
Congratulations.
Beside opening up the new OTB, which we should have in, I think, 2 weeks, so she'll have it by New Year's and hopefully by Christmas Day. Everything else is just running smoothly down there, and we thank you very much.
Turf Paradise.
Vincent Francia, General Manager, Turf Paradise, Chairman McClintock, Commissioners, Director Casillas, and Director Ashley. I wanted to give you a brief update on the financial well-being of the racetrack from opening to today. But I first want to address the Commissioner's concerns about the fire and the rider, Martin Boudreau, that suffered seriously injured. Mr. South was right. November 24th was when the fire occurred. It started at approximately 2 a.m. in the morning. I got the call at 2:30 at home and immediately went into the track. By the time I got there, Phoenix Fire had already put the fire out. The first responders to the fire were our security people and grooms who live in the dormitory. 8 horses that were adjoined to these 2 tack rooms were immediately evacuated from their stalls. The cause of the fire, as explained to me by Phoenix Fire, is a power strip sparked or malfunction. That's how it was described to me, causing the tack room to ignite and then the second tack room to ignite. Now, the stalls at Turf, what helps us in situations like this, and you never want to have a fire. I went through a very bad one at Penn National, where we lost 48 horses. You never, ever want to go through it. But what helps at Turf somewhat is the barns are concrete, they're cinder block, and the roofs are metal, so it controls the area. The 2 rooms in question, the 2 tack rooms in question, are currently being cleaned out of everything, refurbished, and we're getting them back up so that the trainers can use them. In regards to Martin Boudreau, this is the second serious injury that this rider has suffered this year. It happened in a quarter horse race. Martin's mount was trailing a horse, and the horse cut in front of him. Martin's horse clipped heels. Martin went down very hard. He also got trampled by his own horse in the process. Martin suffered serious injury to the right femur, to the femur of his right leg. The ribs on his right side were all broken. Those on the left side were what they call floating. I visited him in the hospital. He was of good spirits. He's since been discharged, but he's going to have a long road to recovery. The surgeons, while I was there, were there and suggested to him a surgery to address the rib and the 2 punctured lungs that he had. But they described it as experimental with high risk of infection. At least they let Mr. Boudreau know up front. Mr. Boudreau declined the further surgery, so everything is going to have to heal naturally. Commissioner Gorey, I hope this helps.
Yeah, and I actually did have one more question I had forgot about. Are we still doing the study on injuries on the horses and all that?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Would you like to know when we meet, when Mr. Stiles and Mr. Cassis and I meet on that? Because we do it monthly.
Oh, no, I just wanted to make sure it was still ongoing, because that will be critical if we can cut down injuries going forward, because as everyone just saw what happened in Florida with the banning of greyhound racing, that was a big argument, was the number of greyhounds that were dying. And I think we need to show to the public we're doing everything we can to reduce injuries and deaths on the horses.
It's something that never leaves my radar, and I know it doesn't leave Mr. Stiles or Mr. Casillas' radar. That's why we meet monthly for updates. A quick look at the financial health of Turf Paradise. This is through the first 35 days of the race meet. We are up in all areas that are pertinent to our financial well-being. On-track handle is up nearly 8%. OTB handle is up a little over 2%. Out-of-state handle, which is an indication of how the out-of-state horse players accept or do not accept our market, is up nearly 10%. So everything is good so far. Significant too, we are comparing 35 days of this year to 37 days of last year. So we were able to do more in 35 than we did in 37. So things are looking positive. Questions I will answer if there are any.
Thanks, Vince. Optional Industry Stakeholder Association updates. Arizona Counties Racing Association. Arizona Greyhound Association.
Still my dog's here.
Arizona Quarter Horse Association. Thank you. Arizona Thoroughbred Breeders Association.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. HBPA.
Commissioners, Leroy Gussman, the Arizona HPPA. I feel like I probably said enough already, but anyway, I just wanted to say we are working with Greg Stiles and Scott Waterman on this fatality thing. It's a big concern to the horsemen. It's a big concern, I know, to Turf. As I mentioned, we meet monthly, but we are also doing the fatality reports with the individual trainers and owners on each horse that has deceased. We bring in the trainers and owners and get the vet records, and Scott Waterman and Greg and I sit down and visit with them about everything that's going on with the horse. We're trying to learn as much as we can. It's been quite a variety. A lot of people, I think we all in the beginning thought it's older horses that are wore out, they're the ones breaking down, but in reality it's a lot of the young horses. And we've also had some deaths from just natural causes. So unfortunately, I think to date, after yesterday, we're even with last year. But it's not because we're not all working on it and trying. So, and then and just another thing, President Hutton wanted me to share with you guys. The Arizona HPPA is the horsemen's group, and we're in horsemen representatives from horsemen of all three tracks. It's true, some horsemen will race at all three tracks. Not all horsemen race at all three tracks, but we represent everybody. And all of this, we've been having special board meetings dealing with all these issues and how the horsemen should deal with all of this stuff going on between the three tracks. And we're ready for it to all be over and have everybody work together. So they just want me to share that.
We are too.
Thanks, Leroy. Yeah, we definitely are too. Anybody from the Jockeys Guild? All right. So item F, summary of current events affecting the Arizona Racing Commission, ARS 38. 2018-431.02K. We've already discussed the fact that we need you guys to look into these rules affecting simulcasting. Is there anything else that needs to be put on the agenda? Any matters that need to be placed on future agendas?
When does the legislative session begin?
I think January 1.
January 14th.
14th, yeah.
So absolutely.
Okay, so then the 10th would be the following meetings after that. We would like to get an update on anything that might impact the industry that may be proposed.
Okay, call to the public. Buzz, do you have anything else you want to say?
Nothing.
Okay. Nathan?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mike Rossi?
Yeah, we
Okay. And we heard from Zach. And Jim Torrey, you want to... Okay, thank you very much. The next regular Arizona Racing Commission meeting is tentatively scheduled for 10 a.m. on Thursday, January 10th, 2019, in this room, in this building. It is subject to change based on a quorum. For current information about the Arizona Racing Commission meeting schedule, please visit the Arizona Department of Gaming Racing Division website. Or call Cassie Goodwin, 602-771-4263. And then entertain.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Lawless?
Yes.
Commissioner Garay?
Yes.
Commissioner McClintock?
Yes.
Commissioner Heupel?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Meeting is adjourned at 11:49 a.m. 11:49 a.m. 11:49 a.m. 11:49 a.m. 11:49 a.m.